You guys can see my screen. It's full of stuff. I was working like a madman. So
I
that's none
see.
of that's related to anybody's question. It's just what I had on my screen.
Well, when are you
So
not
anyway,
working,
welcome
David?
everybody. It's 6 o'clock in California. I know this is a 90-minute plan or a 90-minute schedule. I won't be here for the last 15 minutes, so you guys can hang out on your own from whatever time it is in your neck of the world. In about an hour and 15 minutes or so, for the last 15, I'm going to disappear. My daughter's finishing her senior year in the volleyball program, her final volleyball deal after many, many years of being an athlete. Tonight's her senior night awards thing, so I'll be running down to that here in about an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, we
So
can
the
allow
other
you that for
day,
sure.
why don't you welcome us all, Warren, and set the stage a little bit based on what we did the other day, and then we'll go from there.
Well, absolutely, David. As we posted, the theme of this webinar is it is Q&A time with David Book, and it sounds like we're going to get 75 minutes of David's time tonight, which is cool. We
Yeah.
may or may not continue after that. And if you attended the first one, I think it turned out really well. We got quite a few questions in and answered. Tonight's format is a little different. Everybody's microphone is unmuted right now. So please mute your microphone on your end until you're called on, and that'll help the sound quality for everybody involved.
Perfect.
And if you have a question for David, just raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, and we'll make sure that between David and myself, we get to you and get to you in order. You may also send me a question, which I will then send on to David, or you could just send it to him through the chat window, whatever works best for you. And so with that, I'll kind of get out of the way. I'm sure we'll have some new questions. I do have one from Miguel, so maybe we could start with that if that's okay with you, David.
Oh yeah,
Miguel?
that would be great. Miguel was here the other day and he had some really intelligent things to ask, which was great.
Well, he could not be with us tonight, but he did send me an email. So here's your first question of the night. Will there be a fix for the Maps plugin that with iOS 6 does not load native Maps app to show directions, but loads the Google Maps via Safari?
There will and there won't. There will and there won't. I'm not completely sure yet what the fix is going to be. iOS and the way that you interact with the iOS WebKit, which is the UI WebKit framework, changed a lot during iOS 6, and we're not alone in that. Many of the older implementations of the driving directions, they didn't get broken. iOS is diverting those, I guess is the right word, to a web view to show the directions, which is definitely not what we all want. So I assume there's going to be a fix, although I don't know of one yet. So I don't think it's going to be a difficult thing on our end to do once Apple publishes the formal way to do that. As we all know, they've been kind of struggling with maps. So that's for Miguel, who, for those of you who don't know, Miguel is in Portugal, I believe, and real nice guy in the forums a lot, and hopefully that'll help him when he watches this video.
It should. You would recognize him as Mad Rod on the forum.
Ah, there you go. Perfect. I
Does
don't
any?
see any
Yeah,
other hands up. Go ahead, Warren.
yeah. I don't see any other hands up either. So I'll re-ask one question that I asked to start last time, just for those that weren't here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you talk a little bit about this new partnership that you announced a couple of days ago?
Absolutely. The Applets partnership, which is great. In fact, let's bring up applets.com on my browser here. Applets, and let me find the Buzztouch page for Applets. I believe they have us highlighted somewhere down here. Applets is a really cool service. In full disclosure, it's also some colleagues and some friends of mine. I've been friends with these people longer than I've been now formally in a partnership with them. The bottom line is both of our services um, both of our services go hand in hand in some cases, and so what we're trying to do is help the users that come to our site that don't necessarily find what they're looking for, and also help users that come to the Applets site that don't necessarily find what they're looking for there. And so people in this discussion understand what Buzztouch does, but let me add one little point here. Lots and lots and lots of people come to our site that aren't actually looking to create their own app. That might be something that they learn as they go and they realize it's a little technical for them. That might be something that they just happen across our site and they're not sure what it is. And so what Applets is and for those people, I think Applets is maybe something they should look into. What Applets is a contest for app ideas, and then Applets and their community vote on all of the submitted app ideas, and they choose a winner, and then Applets develops that winning app. And so for some people, believe it or not, they come to sites like ours and like Applets and like lots of others now, not because they necessarily want to make something, but they just want something done. They want something on their phone, and so they would maybe love to see their idea get created so that they can go to the store and buy it and put it on their phone. And so Applets' audience sometimes has an idea that they might want to try to execute on and create themselves, in which case Buzztouch could be a perfect example or a perfect site for them, right? And so Applets could maybe send us that traffic. And then the same thing is in the reverse that I just mentioned, is people land on Buzztouch who aren't necessarily into making their own app, and they learn that after they explore a little bit, and so we'd like to send those people to Applets. And then furthermore, we're hoping to, the last part of this is, we're finalizing the agreement that helps Buzztouch, me, create and be the formal developer for all of the winning apps. So for example, this FitMate app or this Sleep Night app or this Teach and Earn and Chronicles and all these different winning app ideas that they have, you're going to see me, either by myself or with a team, create these winning app ideas. Hopefully about every 5 or 6 weeks or so, you'll see us actually produce something. And what that'll let us do is add to the idea that, and get some credibility behind the idea that you're not limited when you use a tool like Buzztouch. You can make anything that you want. And of course, it takes a little skill and a little creativity. And I hope to show off the approach that I take as a professional in using our tool to create something of real high quality that people will want. And so that'll allow us to build, in essence, a portfolio of high quality applications that were made by us using our tool, which would then lead to hopefully some more credible developers that find us, and maybe a different kind of perception of us as an online tool in the market that's getting kind of crowded with, frankly, kind of elementary basic app builders that we don't want to be involved with. So that's what we're going to do. And you'll also see a slow shift in some of the verbiage and the communication on the site, our site, buzztouch.com, as we try to kind of slowly move ourselves into that, and try to change the perception of what we're doing and kind of our image and our brand, more involved around professional app creation versus, click, get yourself a cookie cutter app. So that's the Applets partnership, which is great. So thanks for bringing that up, Warren.
Sure. Susan's with us, but apparently her mic is not working tonight, so she just forwarded me a question.
Okay.
Says, is there any plan to have the person who wins the Applets contest do some app maintenance on a control panel?
Absolutely. If you guys have heard my 4Ds kind of sermon where I talk about the 4Ds, Ds as in David, approach to design and developing and creating yourself an application, just quickly, they're design, develop, distribute, and then dedicate. And dedicate being that last step where you have to figure out what you're going to do long term with lots and lots of data that these applications create. So in the case of Applets and their winning app ideas, there'll be lots of those apps that absolutely need a back end and need a way to curate a lot of that content, and potentially allow the app owner, which would be Applets, to manage changes within the application from that control panel. So Susan brings up a great point. How are we going to do that? And I'm absolutely planning to use the self-hosted package along with each one of these applications. And of course, I'll deliver that to Applets, and we'll put their brand on it, and one of their staff will presumably go to that control panel and manage all of the content that app requires or that app's creating. A perfect example would be, Chronicles. That was one of their last winning ones. If you read the description, Chronicles is kind of a family diary app, so it makes sense that all that content would be shared. And of course, in order to share it, it would need to go from the device to the cloud, which would be the Buzztouch server implementation, the control panel, and then back to other devices. So we'll absolutely leverage that. It makes perfect sense. So Mr. David, you're up next. How you doing, my friend? Are you there, David? I don't hear you. Maybe you're muted.
Tough.
There you go.
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I haven't chatted with you for a bit. Hopefully school's going good.
It's keeping me busy.
Good. So what's your question tonight?
Well, the question, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you pretty good.
No, that's for the first time. Okay. And the question I had was, it's great that we have a new partnership, but I was wondering, was there any partnership between Socialize when he contacted you, the CEO?
No, we don't have a formal partnership with Socialize. That kind of fell apart a little bit, not in a negative way, but I think really what happened is he and I were talking quite a bit there 3, 4, 5 months ago, and both of us just kind of running around. I think it was more of a personal thing to where neither one of us really followed through with that idea. I think the Socialize,
Right.
I think the Socialize situation is a little bit different in compared to the Applet situation, because there's really kind of two types of startups out there in this kind of world of the internet. And one of those is a startup where we're a small group of people, fast-moving, easy to make decisions. We can make changes overnight. And then there's another, and a lot of startups are like that, like Applets. But the companies like Socialize and some of those others are quite a bit bigger and slower moving, sometimes because they have more people, sometimes because they have investors to answer to. And it's difficult sometimes to make
Not as flexible
partnerships with those companies. So they fall apart kind of often.
Okay, well, thanks.
Yeah, good question. And Susan, it looks like, has a follow-up with who will do the artwork for the Applet app. And so as it stands right now, I'll go back to Applets. As it stands right now, Applets has in-house designers that they've already been using to make what they've already worked on. And so we're going to get a design specification that's very detailed from them with all of the application assets. We call them all the artwork pieces to implement their idea. Part of the idea creation, or the ideation, some people call that, some part of the design step of an app, a significant part of it is that artwork. And so they've done a lot of that with these ideas, right? They help kind of curate the idea into something professional and then prepare that look, feel, experience for the app winner, so that when they do develop it, they're kind of one step ahead. So we won't be having to do that. Now, I expect to have some input, of course. When you go to develop things, it's a little bit, it's basically impossible to do it without any input from the developer, but they'll be doing a lot of that stuff in advance for us. So great question. Great question. I see a couple of new names in here that I've not met before. Hudson, good to meet you, Hudson. And James, I'm not sure if I've met you before, James. Pleasure to meet you. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm sure we've got plenty. We've got another hour.
Well, David, I'll just throw one in here so we've got a starting spot.
Sure.
And this is kind of a non-technical question, but it's related to Buzztouch. How do you kind of plan? What do you have a plan for where this is going with Buzztouch? And that's probably not a fair question, but you know what I mean. What's your long-term plan, short-term plan, and how do you stay on track? Who or what keeps you on track to get to where you see the vision of this going?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if somebody has a follow-up question while I ramble on, go ahead and raise your hand or type it in the chat box here, because I tend to ramble with some of these ideas. And we talked a little bit about this the other day, Warren, but here's some facts and some ideas that I think you can chew on as it relates to that question, which is what is our long-term plan and our long-term approach to accomplishing our vision? And so you guys have heard me in the past talk about my vision, and my vision has not changed, and hopefully it won't change, and that is we want every single application project, app project, if you will, in the world to start at buzztouch.com. And so if you're going to be making an application as a school project, if you're going to be making an application as a business for yourself, if you're going to be making an application for a customer, we call those client projects. If you're going to be making an application for yourself, we call those developer projects. Like, for example, you're going to put them in the App Store. We want you to start on our site, and we want our site to be, we want it to be obvious to you why you would want to begin your project and maybe even complete your project on buzztouch.com. And the plan is, and what we've been trying to do, and I'll talk a little bit about how we've in essence failed in a lot of ways. What we've been trying to do is figure out how to communicate that goal. And so one of the biggest challenges that we have is me. And I say that in a very literal sense. I am the kind of person who understands this quote problem, if you're one of those types of people, developer project, personal project, client project, or business project, I understand the problems that you're going to face when you go to set out to make that app. And I understand them in ways that most people don't because I've done this so much. The problem that I have is I can't communicate that very well on the site. We have trouble communicating with simple things like our design, like the site needs to be redesigned. We have trouble communicating in terms of the step-by-step process. There needs to be a clear process. We have trouble communicating the learning each of these steps. And instead of doing quick little 5-minute videos, we do these long hour, you've heard me talk about the need to change some of this stuff up. And so all of that comes from me in my mind and my basically ridiculous amount of enthusiasm and going every different direction. So we absolutely need somebody to help me with that plan. And so Stephen, my business partner Stephen, and I have been spending a lot of time over the last several weeks in these regards. And so the first thing that we're going to do, and this speaks to the plan, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to redesign our homepage. We've already begun. We're almost done, actually. And instead of this video that doesn't really help people in a whole lot of ways, you're going to begin to see some imagery and some text that talks about those 4 different types of projects. I'll repeat them again: developer project, personal project, client project for, you're doing it for hire, or a business project. And so why should you use Buzztouch to start your project if you're one of those people? Should be easy to understand. So one of the first steps that we're going to do is try to say that in less words and more imagery and just kind of explain it better so people know why we're there. The next problem that we have that I really want to fix, which is part of the plan, how we're going to basically take this over, is there's this kind of golden rule online with all kinds of websites and systems and services that sounds a little bit like this. If you don't love it in 5 minutes, if you don't have that aha moment in 5 minutes and immediately kind of, quote, get it, what it does and how it can help you, you're pretty much going to lose people. So our tool used to have that in the early days when it was, previous versions where it was really much simpler and people understood right away what it did and they were very satisfied with that. The problem is the market and the landscape changed, and so that simple approach a few years ago that was so wonderful is now not adequate anymore. So we need to have an approach that's easy to understand, that's quick to recognize as valuable, but also allows really a tremendous amount of flexibility so that you don't have things like cookie cutter apps and all those kinds of things. So what we're going to do in that regard is redesign, and again, we're already working on this. We're going to redesign the approach that we try to get you to take when you go to create that project. So for example, if you're building a project for a client, you're a client project person, then it should help you with problems, understand the problems that you're going to have, whether you realize it or not. It should help you get to that kind of aha moment within 5 minutes much quicker. So we'll walk you through a process to help you understand why this is the tool to use. So same thing with the student, same thing with the business, right? And so the way that we build an app right now is kind of convoluted, actually. Let me go to Buzztouch server real quick and log into my self-hosted server. If we go to build an application right now, what we end up with is certainly not a step-by-step process, and certainly not that's something easy to understand, and absolutely something that's confusing. I mean, what is all this stuff? What is this configuration data for? You know, what are all these screens for? You know, how are they related to each other? We need to simplify this process while also maintaining all of the flexibility that each one of these plugins uses, right? All the dozens of things that you can change. So that's what we're going to do short term in terms of our plan. And I see James has got a question, and so does Susan. We'll get to those in just a sec. So redesigning the message and the communication, which will include imagery and artwork and less text and more people, and show off some people on our site who appreciate what we've done, and some case studies and things like that to identify those 4 different types of projects. The second part of that is simplifying and streamlining and really polishing up the design of how the tool works. And then third and fourth and fifth and sixth and on and on and on. I can speak to a lot of different other plans. But the third thing that we're going to do, and then we'll stop and go to some other questions. The third thing that we're going to do is we have to completely rethink and re-engineer what it is that we're selling. The purchasing process, because we do have a budget and we have bills to pay and we do have to have revenue, which nobody minds, but the proposition we have today with the plug-in market and the account upgrades and all the different ways that you can give us money are very, very confusing. And we need to simplify what it is that we're offering for sale. Again, 5 minutes. You have to understand why you would want to pay us, why you don't want to pay us, and move forward with having a little bit more success in terms of differentiating folks that use our software and folks that are actually customers, so that we can maintain this for years to come, because everybody wants us to be sustainable. We're sustainable today, but we're not going down the right track in terms of what it is that we're trying to sell. I don't see the account types that you have in front of you now being long-term. I just can't imagine that being the case. And so, of course, that'll raise 1,000 questions. But let's move off of that and go to James's question. Once again, James, nice to meet you. It says James Jordan in the chat window, but it says, oh, I guess it says Jordan James up top too. So any plans for Windows Phone platform? Probably not. Probably not. We talked about that for a long time, but unless we get a big demand, which we in essence have zero demand for Windows, or unless something dramatic happens in the market, or unless we suddenly have a ton of resources where we can hire some help and some professionals to execute on Windows in a quality way, we probably won't do Windows. And so I'm not going to say never, but the reality of it is for a small firm like us, you know, one person a week out of, you know, thousands of people that find our site asks us about Windows, so there's just no incentive yet. So Susan's got another question here. Hopefully that helped you, James, and that may be bad news for you. I realize that, and who knows, maybe we'll surprise you, but that's the way it is. Susan's question: what is Buzztouch going to do with optimizing Android for the newer devices? How can we use the 4 image sizes? High density, low density, medium density, etc., etc. Let me back up a little bit and lay a little groundwork for Susan's question, because this is a highly technical question. I'll get Eclipse running so we can use a visual here. Her question relates to the way that Android operates when it goes to find a resource, and a resource in this case is an image. And so Android's operating system has a quote-unquote built-in way to allow the developer to provide multiple pieces of artwork or multiple assets for the same app or for the same image. And so if you can see my screen, in our resources folder in an Android project, we have an animations folder, but we have drawable, and then we have an HDPI and LDPI, and this is high density, low density, medium density. These are different devices, and I'm going to get the simulator running while we have this talk, because there's something I want to show you. So right now, because we started this a long time ago, before there were not only very many Android devices, but certainly not very many big devices, It was something that we didn't necessarily ignore or overlook, but we certainly didn't do much about it in terms of the engineering. So Susan's asking, how are we going to take advantage of the drawable folder and the large and the small drawable folder based on the device that's running? So that's a great question. Right now, there's nothing in the works on our end to support that concept. And I know that's a bad answer. As you all know, right now, we're telling everybody to put their artwork in the drawable folder. And then you'll see in the code, let me find a plugin and I'll show you what I'm talking about. You'll see in the code where it accesses the image from the drawable folder. You see that all over the place. Let's look at the splash screen plugin, for example. And I'll show you how we're grabbing that image out of the drawable folder. So let's say that your JSON data in your app has a value for an image that's supposed to come from your project, assets, configuration. Let's say that you have an image, I don't know, I'll just make this up. Let's say you have a screen. Let's go down here in these screens. Say you have in your JSON data something like this. Background image, small device, and you put in mycoolbackground.png. So what you're doing when you add that property to one of your screens is you're saying, hey, on a small device, use this background image. If this were large device, it would do the same thing, right? So the way the code works is when it looks for this, when it finds this in your data, in your configuration data, it's going to look in the drawables folder for this image. And it's always going to look today, it's always going to look literally in the drawables folder, right? In that folder. Not that one, not that one, not that one, or not that one. And the way that it does that technically, let me show you how the code works, and I'll try to find an example of where that is. Let's find in our splash screen where we're looking for an image. And maybe that's a bad example. I don't see one in there. Oh, let's look at the background. Let's look at the background, which is in the activity base class right here. Let's find the point. I'm scrolling fast because we're looking for just a way to do this example here. Confirm, refresh app data, set up background image. There we go. So if we have a background image, oh, that's after it's loaded. Here we go. Background image, large device, background image URL, large device. These are the different variables that might be in your data. So if you have a file name set up, right, and this is actually background image file name small device, I think is the name of the property. Let's look here. Use file name. Yeah, here we go. Background image small device. So it would look like your JSON might look something like that. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, let's assign this value to a variable called background image name in our code. And then we're going to say, hey, if this image name is longer than nothing, if it's got a length, then we're going to try to figure out where to pull that background from. And you'll see right here, we use the Buzztouch file manager class, and we say, hey, file manager, is there a resource in this project in the drawables directory with this name? If there is, cool, let's use it. Let's load that image from the drawables directory. That becomes the background image. If it's not in the project, let's see if it's cached. Because remember, if it came from a URL, we might have downloaded it and then cached it on the device for offline use. So if it's not in the project, let's see if it's in the cache. So once again, hey, file manager, does a cached file exist with that file name? If it does, cool, use that as the background image. If it doesn't exist in the cache, do we have a URL for the background image? Because remember, this might be, instead of file name, this might be URL. And this could be something like dropbox.com/myfolder/whatever, or my website, wherever. It might be on a remote server somewhere that you want to download to the phone so that you can change that image on the fly. So if that's the case, we look for a background image, and if we have one, then we go ahead and download it and we save it to the cache so the next time it'll exist here and we won't get to here. So part of the reason, and I know that's technical, but part of the reason, Susan, that we haven't figured out yet the best approach to take advantage of Android's ability to look through these different directories is because of this URL idea. If you have a background URL small device and a background URL large device, that makes a little bit of sense. But if you have a background file name, small device and large device, do you already understand that you should probably have that in this folder or in this folder or in this folder? It gets a little bit complicated. So back to your question, have we thought about it? Absolutely, we've thought about it. Do we know what we're going to do about it? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. There's been some discussions now that there's all these different device settings, and it goes back to the complexity and kind of the confusion new people have, not just with Android, but say iPad mini, iPad Retina. You know, is it a big device, a medium device, a small device? There's all kinds of things that are just downright confusing. And so I'm going to launch this project real fast to show you, let's see if I didn't break this data, we'll see. I'm going to launch this to show you something in the output console that's related to this. But yeah, that's a great question. And so today, it's kind of up to the developer to make artwork and graphics that are kind of appropriate for all the different devices. And you've heard me talk about this a lot. It's generally not a problem when you have background art that is like my desktop, right? It's this abstract kind of color, shape, design that fits everything big and little. The problems come in when you're trying to do like absolute positioning of a piece of work. If you have an absolutely positioned piece of artwork, it becomes very, very challenging to make it fit in the right spot on all the different sizes. So it's definitely a balance. It's definitely a balance. What I wanted to show you here, and I see you asking another question, which is great. We'll get to that in a sec. When your app launches, let me move this up so you can see our output console. A lot of you may not even realize this is here, but if you look at the log cat, when this app launches, you'll see in the activity or in the device class, the Buzztouch device class, we're telling you this device uses an Android display density of 240 dots per inch. So depending on the simulator or the device you're running it on, you're going to have different. Ooh, I'm showing you a sneak peek of the email image plugin. Hey, that's coming soon. At any rate, when you have different devices running, you'll see a different value here. And really, this is just these values. This device can take pictures. This device can take videos. This device can send emails. It just helps you understand kind of what you're working with when you're debugging. And you'll see this value change. And that's not really related to the discussion we had before, but it does tell you kind of what Android thinks this device is. So Warren's got a few more questions, but let's get back to Susan's follow-up question. Could the problem with images be addressed by individual plugins? If you can turn your mic on, Susan, if it's not broken, I don't quite understand what you mean there. Maybe expand that question a little bit, unpack that a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, it works now. Well, I was wondering if, okay, so say, okay, I have this menu with image plugin, and what if well, that one we're kind of solving by specifying the image size, but what if, like, on the background, I were to have so that the person that uses it would have 6 images. They'd have for iOS a small, the small size, large size, and now maybe a third size when we get to that for the iOS for the new aspect ratio for the new iPhone. And then there'd be 4 more images, maybe 4 different names that they would have for 4 different images that they would be able to bring into the 4 different drawable folders.
Right.
And then you'd be able to then in the code it would actually point to those. So from the control panel, then they would create some JSON elements that then would be for all the 4, essentially 7 different types of image aspect ratios.
Totally.
Yeah, so and then it would slice and dice them in the code then.
Yeah. Let me cut you off there and just kind of back up a little bit and explain to you kind of how much I understand what you're saying, and also something that you may or may not even be considering. Here's another way to look at it. Let's say that you had 6 properties in your JSON like this. And this is just an example, because this could go on and forever, right? Let's just say that you had background small, medium, and large, just for fun. If you weren't using a dynamic control panel, this wouldn't even matter. You'd just add your image here in the drawable, or here, or here, or here on the left. You'd add them in the appropriate folders.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But what we're doing is, since you're explicitly telling your configuration file, the thing that drives your entire application, since you're telling it 3 different values, these would be different presumably, since you're telling it 3 different values, it doesn't matter where you put them.
No, that's true.
Because we're going to go look for them anyway. It becomes an issue of, in the base class and in the base project, the code understanding, is this device small, medium, or large? Because we're going to go find them wherever they are. Because you told us where the medium one is or where the large one is, right? We're saying now, hey, if it's a large one, look for this property. If it's a medium one, look for, if it's a small one, look for this property. So that's a good question, but since we're doing this dynamically, it doesn't matter where you put them, as long as your configuration file can find them. So here's another way to say it. I think where we're going to end up long term, because my little follow-up question when we talk about device sizes is, it's fun to explore and engineer all these ideas, but the challenge comes in when you say, well, what happens in 3 weeks when there's a totally different device?
Yeah, that's true.
So we're constantly thinking about not how to just put these patches and these fixes on the system, but how to have something that's flexible enough to accommodate for things that we know are coming. So I think what we're going to end up with is, in these plugins, and it doesn't matter which plugin you're working with, some of these plugins, it doesn't matter, right? We can add a plugin where the size is not important. PDF doc, it's full size. Device information, full size. Now the artwork changes, but a lot of the properties about these plugins don't change. So I think what we're going to end up with is, on each plugin that has a variable sized device where it matters, like for example in the background image, I think what we're going to end up with here is, I think you're going to tell the control panel about as many images as you want to use. It might be 1 or it might be 10, like you said. And I think what you're going to end up doing is maybe choosing the image or telling us the URL or whatever, and then next to that putting in a number. This is just one way that we've thought about this already, and what the number would represent is, if the device's size is bigger than this, use this image. If you had 3 of these, it would basically try to optimize which image you included for the device itself. So you would, in your case, you would say like 300, 500, 600, and what you'd be saying is, if the device is 300 or less, use this image. If it's 500 to 300, use this one. If it's 700 to 500, because we don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And so you would have an unlimited number of images that you would provide to the control panel to get as creative and as absolute as you think is necessary for your particular project. And in this JSON data, you would have a child items array, and it would be called, background images. And in this background images array, you would have an unlimited number of background images, each with their own property, like device width, right?
Oh, sure.
And blah, 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 device height. So you would define in your control panel as many as you thought were necessary. So that's one way we thought about it, but we don't concretely know the best way to do this yet.
But I do think that Android is really trying to lock into those 4. I haven't read it carefully yet, but they're trying to, yeah, so far.
Yeah, a year ago this didn't exist.
Yeah.
So today it's 4.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens when Android runs on your watch or in your car? Really, it runs on your car, it runs on your watch, it runs on your refrigerator, right? It changes really, really fast.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to, the good news is nowadays we don't have to be in this huge hurry to experiment. But real quick, Warren, before we get back to that, you had another question that was embedded in this, Susan, about the different operating systems, I believe. Yeah, what is Android doing to optimize for the newer devices?
Oh yeah, because we're on 2.2 right now.
Exactly. It's so you can compile this with 4.0. I believe most of these plugins, if we change the target, won't freak out and won't yell. Let's go to Android. Let's go to Google 4.0, for example. Can't remember if it's going to work 4.0 or 4.03. There we go. If we apply this, are we going to get a bunch of errors? No, so right now you can compile it with that. But more importantly, oh, you get some warnings, so there's some deprecated stuff. So if you compile for 2.2, it will run on all the new devices, except there's already some errors being introduced that we're learning about. I don't really see the need to help people or to explain to people that they need to compile for anything newer than that. You can compile for the old stuff and still run it on the new stuff. It's just we have to make sure that the code doesn't break on the new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's been some changes already. They're just completely problematic for us, and it's hard, and that's kind of part of our job. Because we have to constantly stay on top of that stuff, and it's definitely not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not easy. Okay, so Hudson has the next question. Warren, what's Hudson asking? Can you hear us, Hudson, or can you turn on your mic, maybe?
Yes, David. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
So my question is, I want to know if you suggest some software that can be used to create animated splash screens integrated to Buzztouch.
If there's some software that will create animated splash screens, there is not software that I know of, but I'll give you a little tip. And we'll go back to the iOS thing because you guys know my iOS crutch that I use. I'm just so much more comfortable in iOS. Let me open something up and show you a little trick. Most animations are not as technical as most people think. Most animations are very, very simple, actually, and they're just a series of images. An example might be if you drew a cartoon character on a little notepad, and then another cartoon character, and another cartoon character, and another cartoon character. And you the classic, rattle them off on your desk, it would look like an animation. And so we've all seen that, the bicycle spokes kind of thing. And so in iOS, one thing that you can do is you can provide a list of images to any image view, and they will become animated. So let's go to the splash screen here. And this sounds like a great plugin, by the way. It's having a plugin with a bunch of images that are animated. That makes perfect sense. If we go to the splash screen plugin, the existing one that's in the market right now, all we're doing, it's a pretty simple proposition, is we've got a background view for the plugin that holds the background color. Then we've got another background view that holds the background for a possible gradient color, which actually is being ignored these days. If you go to your control panel and you go to screens and we create a splash screen, you'll see what I mean. We only have one splash screen plugin today. So if we go to that splash screen, you'll see the properties. Background color, there's no gradient choices here, so that's being ignored these days. That's some legacy code that's back in the olden days. But anyway, so we have this third thing that we add to the splash screen, that holds the background image. So the background image lives inside of an image view. So we instantiate an instance, an object with image UI image type. We set its frame to the full size of the window. We let it, rotate with the device and all that kind of stuff, and then we add that background image view to the window with the self.view add subview. So background image gets added to the screen. We determine if there's an image opacity setting in the control panel. Do you have an image opacity? Which we also removed. That's old legacy code. So if you did have an opacity, that was the brightness or the dimness of the image. And then we say, hey, what's the image name and what's the image file URL, just like we did before. So instead of doing all of this, if I commented this out, and you're welcome to do this in your own code, instead of doing all this, you could provide an array of images. Image array equals ns array allocate init with, I don't know, I think you can do init with size or something. How about just init? So if you created an array like that and assigned images to this array, creating a list, and actually we can't change an array. We'd have to do an ns mutable array. Mutable means we can change it and add things to it. And I think we can do init with capacity. Let's say we wanted to do like a 5-space array. Then we can add objects to this array. Image array, add object, and we want to add images to it. So we'll do a UI image with image named animation1. So we could add a few images to this. Animation1, animation2, animation3, animation4, animation5. We actually need a few more spaces here to hold the size of the array. So here's an array full of images. We've called it image array. So instead of our background image view having an image set, self.background image, we could take our image view and assign this background image view. We could say self.background image view set image. I believe you can just do image array here, but I'm not sure. Let's see if it'll work or if it'll yell at me. Yeah, it's yelling at me. So the image view, let's look at a UI image view and look at the documentation real quick online. Can't remember the name of the property, but you can set the list of images as its source, and they will automatically animate. So you have, yeah, animation images. So animation images takes an NS array. So we can say background image view set animation images image array. We can set animation duration. Give it a 4 seconds, whatever. That's how long it will take, and we can change the properties of this image view just by providing a list, and that in essence will create an animated splash screen for you. So we could talk in length about how that works, but in iOS you can already do it very, very easily. There's some complicated ways that I can imagine doing it also. You might get kind of fancy, or you might do it old school style and just hard code it into your app. You could also do something like find the splash screen and then create, just like we did before, a list of animation images. Same thing, right? And have a list of images in the data itself, which would allow you to control it dynamically, but you probably wouldn't have to do that if you don't want to, but that's just an idea. So in Android, it's a little bit the same, but also very different. But the idea is, yeah, just provide a series of images and animate the image view. Great question. Hopefully that helped. I'd love to see an animated image splash screen. So I probably lost you a little bit in terms of the complexity there, but I did the best I could, so it's all good. Kristen, I think you're next.
Well, Kristen's got some challenges because he's in a noisy area.
Oh, is he?
So I'll go ahead and read you the question he sent to me.
Okay, perfect.
It says, and he says you're aware of this, that he's gone down the road of finding a developer on the likes of Odesk to help create code for plugins, etc., which has its problems, as most of them are not aware of Buzztouch. He would prefer to use the developer within the Buzztouch community, but at the moment he's not sure who's available, what their skill level is, what their rate is, so forth and so on.
Sure.
Is there a possibility to have an area for Buzztouch developers to advertise their skills and availability should they be interested? They could mention what they are prepared to help with. For example, setting up Apple developer accounts, one-on-one coaching, plugin development, submitting to market, so forth and so on. So that's his question, if there'll be like a listing of resources, people available to help with these projects.
It's a great question. I'm going to answer that question by showing you guys something that you may or may not be aware of, and with some ideas in mind. Let's look at some people in our forum, some of our friends, and let's look at developer info, which isn't showing on Mark's. I thought Mark had it showing, but he does not. Let's find somebody over here who's showing the developer info. Nope, not showing there. It's an option in your control panel. Does Mr. David have it? Here we go, developer info. So already, Kristen, there's a place on our site that's very, very basic that allows you to brag about your skills and to give yourself an introduction and see a, place a generic hourly rate or quote by job or something like that. And I'm going to go to my account and I'm going to go to my developer profile, and I'll show you here how much information that people can enter. So this is all my development information. This is the description of what I'm skilled at. Oh, I guess I could have just went to mine. Skills, technology, experience. So let's go to my David. I should have just went to mine to begin with, at Buzztouch. Oops, I got a period in there. Okay, so here I am. If you go to my developer info, it shows lots of different things that I've entered. And it tells you that I'm not for hire. But I could easily put in here how to get a hold of me. So the first part of your question is absolutely, you can already do that. The problem with this is there's two problems. One is not very many people do it because we haven't yet attracted lots of skilled developers. I'd like to think that we've brought along a lot of developers who were once aspiring developers that are now legitimate developers, and they may not even really realize it. They might not have a whole lot of confidence, but they're absolutely legitimate developers. So that we could do some of that matchmaking. It makes perfect sense. So that's the first question is, yeah, you can already enter all this data. We had hoped that people would do that more. Again, we haven't done a very good job of highlighting that fact. But think about our conversation a half an hour earlier where we were talking about identifying the type of person you are and how Buzztouch can help you. There's certainly going to be some text in there about, yeah, fill in your developer profile and you might want to be able to make some money. You could make some money by making plugins or make some money by helping people. So I would love to think about a time in the future where we did successfully show off developers, kind of like we're doing the top 25, but maybe in a more formal way. The challenge that we're up against right now is I would hate to think that if we advertised developers solely on the case that they wanted to be listed as developers, we'd run into a situation where the public at large may think that these people are somehow far more skilled than they may be. So the ratings and the skill and all that definitely comes in mind, and we have not yet figured out how to do that. Then the other thing that we're trying to balance is we believe that lead generation, if you're a professional developer like myself, I've got a ton of work. I could make applications all day long for some pretty high quality clients, but I've chosen to do this instead of that. Lead generation for professional developers has a value. And we've certainly thought, well, wait a minute, if it's a privilege to be listed on our developer page because we know you're going to get work, well, then it's logical that there would be some kind of a way to compensate us for that privilege, whether it be paying to be on the list, whether it be helping us in other ways, whether it be sharing in the revenue you earn, I'm not sure. Think of something along the lines of an authorized Buzztouch developer or a certified Buzztouch developer. Down the road, maybe, but probably way too early now. I absolutely love that idea. So let me finish Kristen's question with one other concept. They don't have to know what Buzztouch is to help you if you know how to ask them the right question. All you're doing when you're hiring somebody to help you make a screen or a plugin is you're asking them to make you a UI view controller. That's it. Our view controllers extend the Buzztouch view controller, but you could also have a developer make you a view controller that extends a regular view controller, a built-in one, and they don't have to know anything about the Buzztouch view controller. I would argue that if they don't know what extending classes are and parent classes and child classes and all that kind of stuff, they're probably not your developer anyway. All this is a view controller. It's an iOS view controller that may or may not have a nib file, an XIB interface builder file. If you found somebody who claims to be a developer on Odesk who doesn't understand what a UI view controller is, you know, run for the hills, because they're not developers. It's kind of that simple. So your question is, and if you want to write this down, you can all write this down if you want to hire somebody to help you. I need a developer who can make me a UI view controller that will do X. That's all you need to know. I need someone to make me a UI view controller that I'm going to use as an animated splash screen in my app. I just need the view controller. That's all you're asking them to do. And so if you have a UI view controller, let's make one right now just for fun. Let's make one in our config directory just for fun. This is all they're going to do for you. New file, Objective-C class, subclass is the UI view controller, make the XIB files, make the interface builder files, name this my cool view controller, next, save it in wherever you want to save it in your project, and iOS will make it for you. So we have a view controller. This is a class file that extends UI view controller. We have a view controller.m with all the generic methods, right? init with nib name, view did load, did receive memory warning. And we got a nib file. And that nib file is probably already connected to our class file. Yeah, as its file's owner right here, it's a custom class. It's all done. So yes, there's a couple small little tricks that you're going to want to do after you get this from your developer to make it actually work in your Buzztouch project, but here's how easy it is. Instead of extending UI view controller, you're going to extend the Buzztouch view controller. So you'd have to change that if they didn't understand. Xcode's yelling because it doesn't know what that is. So we have to import the BT view controller class. That'll make that error go away. So this is now a Buzztouch view controller instead of a generic one. And then in your .m, instead of init with nib name, all of the view controller classes in Buzztouch have a method called, where is it? Because we extended Buzztouch view controller. Oops, we extended Buzztouch view controller. They all have a method called core. The parent class is oops, I'm sorry, it's in layout. The parent class is called Buzztouch view controller right here. And they have a method called init with screen data. So it's in the parent class, so you don't even have to write it. So because your view controller extends the Buzztouch view controller, this won't ever get used. These may not. Your developer is going to write code right in here. That's it. So if they don't understand this, I'm just going to delete these. If they don't understand this, they're your wrong guy or gal. They have to know what a view controller is, which is like iOS 101. It looks like we had another question here jumping around. Oh, maybe not. So Warren's got a couple. What's up, Warren? I got about 15 more minutes.
Yep, you got about 15 more minutes, so I'll kind of rapid fire these at you here. My first question I'll ask you is my question related to buzztouch.com. How do you search for people on the site? Like, or is there a search, or is that something that's coming down the road?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to do it. The way that I do it is I open up my window and I lean out just far enough to where I don't fall out, and I just yell really loud, and I hope that somebody hears me, but it rarely works. So for you, since you don't have a city around you and you're out in the boondocks wherever you are, we got to come up with a better way. So for Warren to search, the way that I would do it is I would go to advanced. Well, I would copy somebody, right? Let's say we want to search for Stobe. I would copy Stobe If you don't know their name, well, you know what? This brings up a great point. If you don't know their name, you're not going to be able to do this. I guess that defeats the whole purpose. I was going to go down the path of you want to see Stove's forum posts. You could use the advanced search.
Well, let me narrow it a bit for you. Let's say
Yeah.
I'm sitting in, out here in BFE where I'm at, and I want to know, who's around me that's also a
Buzztoucher?
user. Yeah, exactly. I hate that term, by the way. It sounds like
I
a
know, me too.
pedophile.
Yeah, I wouldn't even do that. I'd just go to the Buzz map and I'd say, show me the last 1,000 people. These are the last 1,000 logins. These are people. And I would zoom in to, where are you? In Effingham.
Effingham,
So I'd
Illinois.
click somewhere around here and I'd zoom in a little bit and I would do it this way. So Effingham is where? Over here somewhere?
You're close.
Decatur close?
Decatur's just north of me.
Okay, there you go. So these people, if you just click these little bubbles, they're all around you. And these are people who have logged in recently, who have shared their location, and don't mind telling us where they're at. So I'm guessing that yours, because I thought I would find you in here, but you're not in here.
I am. You just didn't click on it.
Oh, where are you?
I'm on the only one you didn't click. Down.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Me. There I am.
So here's some people around you. And this is the last 1,000. If you wanted to say, show me the last 100, well, then it's a little bit of a different question.
Right.
And it might be better or worse, but it's interesting nonetheless. You can find people around you.
Well, it would be nice
cool.
if let's say I wanted to put together something and say, hey, everybody that's close, let's all come to Effingham and get together and do something.
Totally.
There should be some way that I could do that. And I know that's on your list of things to do. So that's all cool. That was my
I love that idea.
That was my personal question. Now let me throw a couple in here from other people. Hudson had a follow-up that we missed, and Hudson's new with us, so he's got some kind of basic questions, which is great to have him on board. His other question was, he's working on an Android version of his first app. Most of his files are PDF files. He needs some kind of plugin to make this PDF file work in Android like a native app.
Okay.
Can you point him in the right direction?
Yeah, but before I do, I'm going to laugh. Susan, are you listening? Susan's in
Why am I Mongolia?
Susan's in Mongolia. What the heck?
What did I do?
Well, in your control panel, this is the latitude and longitude you have for yourself.
Oh, look, I got them. It should be a minus on the. No, it's got a. Is it one of them should be a minus? I can't remember which one.
I think it's that one.
That's funny.
Nope, not that one. Dude, that's laughs.
Well, I didn't put the. I just put my address in. Probably not my latitude and longitude.
Here you are.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's my street.
I was gonna say, who the heck's in Mongolia? And what
that's what MN means, Mongolia.
Well, here's the crazy thing. There's 1,000 people on this map right now. I click the latest 1,000. I click one of them, and it's someone in this meeting with 9 of us.
That is a small world. That's funny.
Totally. So, Warren,
and it's in Mongolia.
What was that again?
I totally went off on a tangent when you asked something. I can't remember now what you asked.
Hudson's question is about he needs to use PDF files in his Android app, and he needs some kind of a plug-in to make the PDF files work in Android like a native app.
Yep. There's not an offering for that I'm aware of. So, as crazy as this sounds, when you buy an Android device, if it just supports PDF displaying and viewing and all that kind of stuff, it's because the person who made the device is paying Adobe a license fee. If it does not natively, then you got to buy another app. So the good news, which is crazy to me, in other words, a short way to say that is Android does not know how to display PDFs natively. It can't. So somebody's welcome to research that and correct me if I'm wrong, but if it does, it's because the person who implemented that version of Android, Samsung, HTC, Motorola, whoever, Nexus is Asus, I think, is paying Adobe, the owners of that technology, just like Apple's paying them. Now, and here's the good news, most Android devices are absolutely capable of displaying PDF documents and Word documents and Excel documents and all that, but they do it through a third-party app. And so when you use the PDF plugin, in Android, it'll take you to a landing page that says show PDF. And if the user has multiple apps on the phone that are capable of handling that kind of content, the PDF, they will be displayed a list of choices. What do you want to open this in? So I know the worry is that it feels like they're leaving your app. The reality of it is they are leaving your app. The good news is they've always got the back button. And the other good news is that's the way PDF works on that device. And the person who owns the device is absolutely used to that. So there's pros and cons to every one of these decisions that these phone makers make. And that one, I like the way iOS handles PDF because it feels appropriate. Android does not do it that way, which is a bummer. So great question.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Dave.
I'm sorry.
No, you're welcome. You're very welcome. And so we've got about 10 more minutes.
I do have another question for you, David, and this is
Okay.
from Mr. David.
Awesome.
And he sent me a message that says Buzztouch is growing like crazy in so many ways that he can barely keep up these days. And lately it's becoming harder and harder to convince his clients to stay self-hosted with the plugin market released. The one reason I still have clients left are due to my expertise in Buzztouch, Xcode, and helping out in general. In the future, will self-hosted get more perks or more updates, or will it eventually become less focused on?
Oh, that's a great question. I wish that I knew the answer to that, David. It's hard to know. In other words, I don't know what the market's going to want. Today, again, my technical mind, I made the assumption a couple of years ago that people would place a high value on having a control panel and their app, a self-hosted control panel. As it's turned out, very few people place a value on that. In professional situations like you're pointing out, you as the developer have a lot of influence in the way that that project is designed, developed, distributed, and dedicated. So you can get people in many cases to be self-hosting with your justification in terms of why that's a good plan. If it's not a good plan for their app, then it's not a good plan for their app. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It's just some apps aren't conducive to self-hosting panels. They don't necessarily need them. So that's one fact. I don't know. We're not going to stop developing it. I absolutely can't wait to get the new release out. In fact, all that stuff you saw on my desktop earlier, which is all on here somewhere, I don't know where, it's all this stuff. That's all self-hosted stuff. And so we're definitely going down that path. The two biggest problems with self-hosting, in my opinion, one is it's complicated and people don't understand how to use it. And two is it's complicated and people don't know how to install it. So the next version of self-hosting should make it easier to install, easier to upgrade, and easier to understand. But it's, I think, always going to be reserved for people who have a higher level of understanding like you do, David, and your ability to explain that to your clients. I can't really control. I think you might also be talking about if the offering on Buzztouch becomes better and better and better for free. Yeah, I understand why self-hosting is less valuable. I haven't thought about that angle a whole lot, actually, but I think what you're thinking of is if you self-host, you can have more plugins, which was kind of the way in the old days. That makes sense.
Can I jump in very quickly?
Yeah, Keith's got his hand up, so go for it, Keith.
Yeah, just on the, I want to address David and Mr. David. With the self-hosting thing, people have been able to download website templates for the past 10, 12 years. The majority of them don't. Many successful companies who could just download a template and do things for themselves, they choose not to because they don't want to get involved in the hassle of doing this thing and something else to manage. So I think the value that you have to add, Mr. David, is, you're removing a headache from that company. Do they really want to update things there's a new Buzztouch server update, they have to upload it to their control panel, download new plugins, update their plugins. The value add that you provide for the Buzztouch self-hosted is that you take care of all that in the same way that people don't want to download a website template and have to update that information. Can somebody FTP into that site and change that paragraph? You know, it's more positioning yourself as, I mean, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that explanation. I know I have a few clients that specifically do it because they want their clients to be able to update their apps without having to go to Buzztouch.
Right.
Sort of a whitelisting solution. Whitelisting. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
One other thing to keep in mind too, and I'll just add this while
I totally agree.
The last thing that I just thought of was, in terms of positioning yourself as a professional, if you're a business and you want your own app, there's something, I don't know how to explain it, something oddly unusual. If you spend $6, $7, $8, $9, $3,000, whatever, to have somebody build you an app, there's something odd about going to a site that feels free, buzztouch.com, to manage that content. So we all recognize that Buzztouch has been around a while. It's going to be around for a long time in the future. But for a professional customer of yours, they probably shouldn't be going to Buzztouch to manage that app you made them anyway. Not because there's something wrong with it, but think of things like, let's say ESPN called me and said, we need you to make us an app for SportsCenter that needs to manage all these videos. Well, a company like ESPN is not going to be satisfied basing their whole entire operation on this free web startup from Monterey, California. So going to buzztouch.com and logging into the ESPN app becomes a liability, not a value. Now compare that, juxtapose that to the conversation when I say to ESPN, we're absolutely capable of implementing that technology. We're going to use technology on a back end that I'm going to set up for you in the Amazon cloud. It's going to be a web-hosted control panel with ESPN's brand on it, and off we're going to go. And then if somebody in there says, well, why don't I just do that at Buzztouch? I would say, well, with all due respect, Mr. ESPN executive, you could do it at Buzztouch, but you're not. That's why you contacted me. You need me to guide you in these ways. So that's, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. So one more, or should we wrap it up, Warren?
Well, I don't have any more questions listed on this end. So, and I know that, Paige's final night is tonight. You need to get there. So we do appreciate your time very much, David. It's always a pleasure to be able to pick your brain and talk to the master of all this and get these questions answered. And I just as a personal aside, I have really enjoyed the last two that we've done, these Q&A sessions.
Cool.
So I'm thinking that we will make this a regular feature let's say every 2 weeks, we will have just a Q&A session for people. And then we'll also have some structured webinars in there as well. But I think, the feedback that I've already gotten from yesterday and I think from today is that people enjoy them as well.
Awesome. I enjoy it too. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Warren, of course. And then Susan, move from Mongolia or buy a winter coat because you think it's cold in Minnesota. Dude, Mongolia is ridiculous. So I will see you guys online, and thanks for the time, and we'll catch you later. Great stuff.
All right. Thank you, David, and thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Are you guys going to hang out, or are you all leaving?
It's up to you. We can hang out as long as you would like to, Keith. It's if you want.
No, David's gone. We can talk about him instead.
Yeah. Now that David's gone, we can all we can all throw in some things. Susan, that was absolutely hilarious seeing you out in Mongolia.
It's so weird. I don't know what I did wrong that it did that, but it looked like it was missing a minus sign. I can't remember if the 93 is supposed to be minus.
No,
I think.
When he pulled that up, I was like, no, I've seen Susan's app. She's done for local companies, and they're not based in Mongolia.